Hi, welcome to Nutshell Recap. The future Enid saw in the mirror was terrifying for him. He had been brutally murdered. He held the mirror while trembling, but the alchemist's mind was getting off track. He didn't dwell on the thing of how he got murdered, but on the potion. It was actually an incredible breakthrough. There had never been any potion that was able to present the future in detail like this. He wanted to take the notes first, but then he paused. The table position and the things kept on it were the exact same as they were shown in the mirror. Enid couldn't believe it. His mind instantly clicked, which meant he was going to be attacked very soon. He didn't want to delay anymore. He must get out of here now. He hurriedly packed the emergency potions into his bag and dashed out towards the exit. But at the door, he remembered the boy upstairs sleeping in his room. But Glunn was not sleeping at all. He stood at the window side while looking below. There was a group of assassins sneaking into the house. He watched them with cold eyes. At that moment, Enid barged in to wake him up. But seeing him awake, he stepped closer towards him and asked what he was looking at outside. Glunn glanced at him and said that there were some people sneaking in. Hearing this, Enid realized that it was very late to do something. So he knelt down and turned his back to Glunn and told him to hop on to him. They were getting late and he will explain everything later. Glunn was surprised that Enid was not one of them, the group of assassins. Seeing him in a trance, Enid shouted at him what he was waiting for. He had to be quick. Glunn hopped onto him and asked if there was a way out the back. But Enid shook his head and replied that there was only one entrance on the first floor, so they need to jump out of the window. They were waiting for the assassins to move somewhere else, waiting for the chance. And when they saw it, Enid took out a potion from his bag and threw it in the air. He warned Glunn not to scream when he would jump. Glunn nodded and agreed, and then he leaped in the air outside the window. There was a magic circle to protect them. When he reached closer to the ground, he was floating and then, unhurriedly, stood on the ground without making any sound. Seeing all this, Glunn asked what it was. To this, Enid replied that he had used a levitation spell. Glunn had some suspicion because Enid did say that he used magic to take out the slave merchants. But were all alchemists capable of using magic so easily like him? But then he heard some rustle around the bushes. So he alerted Enid to be careful, but they were a little late. Somebody attacked him and they fell to the ground. It was a sudden attack. Enid gritted his teeth because there were more of them and were surrounded. The assassins had confirmed their target, and the kid was their target. Enid knew that someone was after him. It was exactly why he didn't want to get involved with nobles. He started rummaging the bag because now wasn't the time for regret. He took out a potion and threw it at those assassins who were going to attack Glunn. The assassins were startled by the sudden fog fizzling in the air, and then all of them fainted before even reaching the boy. Glunn just stood there watching him. Enid called out him to hop onto his back again so they could escape quickly, but more and more attackers started chasing them. Enid was running carrying Glunn while he was out of breath, but he had prepared the potion. He threw it towards the assassin, which exploded with a boom. All of them were entangled in a whirlpool. Glunn was surprised by this direct hit. Was it even possible for him to be fighting off those assassins to win his trust? Because Glunn was at a terminal stage of mistrust. He asked him why he was carrying so many attack spells with him. Enid couldn't understand it at first, but then he told him that those were not any kind of attack spells. Those were just to help with house chores. He made them to blow away fallen leaves. Glunn was speechless hearing it. Then he asked if he was getting tired, but Enid replied that he was fine, but deep down he was scolding him to stop asking if he already knew. After a while, Glunn asked the question he had wanted to know since the beginning, that he could have just handed him over to them and walked away. Why did he risk his life for him? Hearing the question, Enid was startled, but he answered quickly that he couldn't just hand him over to them. Well, of course, there was a reason why he brought him in, but he couldn't even get started yet. Enid was sweating nonstop because of running. He was saying that he couldn't just look away from a kid who was in danger. But Glunn totally misinterpreted this. He thought that he was crying because Enid looked so calm. But yet, was he afraid? Although, he couldn't fully trust Enid yet. He was getting soft on him because he knew that this guy was not the one behind this attack. On the other hand, Enid was so out of breath that he was thinking of doing exercise regularly. Glunn encouraged him to hold on just for a bit longer, because the sun will rise soon. Hearing it, Enid was confused about what could the sun possibly do to help them. Well, when the sun would rise, Glunn would return to his true self, who was full-grown man. Glunn was thinking that by then he would be able to take care of all of them in seconds. However, he was not going to reveal his biggest secret to a man he had just met yesterday. But he wished that could comfort him in some other way. So he told him that when the sun rose, they would head over to town. Maybe they could find someone that could help them. Hearing it, Enid chuckled because in his heart, Glunn was innocent and naive. He was just a kid after all. He replied that if they head over to town, innocent people might get involved. And then he knelt to put Glunn to the ground so they could get some rest. Enid had a clear understanding if there was trouble in a small town like this. People would think it was his fault since he had just moved there. Then he would no longer be welcome there. He was not going to destroy the trust he had gained till now. He had worked so hard to build that lab. Glunn coughed and agreed with him that he was right. Going into town didn't seem to be a good idea. Well, anyway, he suggested to Enid while sitting on the rock that he looked pretty exhausted so he should get some sleep. But Enid didn't think it was good, but Glunn insisted that he would keep watch and not worry. Enid was embarrassed because of the nice offer, but he was skeptical about whether was it really okay to put his life in the hands of a kid. But he was very tired running the whole night, so he agreed to rest for a while and told the kid to wake him up if something happened. Enid instantly went into deep sleep while thinking if he had made the right choice or not. Glunn glanced at him, and that it was very quick, but it was better. That way he wouldn't have to take any other measures to hide his secret. When the sun rose from the horizon, it became bright, and Enid started to wake up. When he opened his eyes, he thought of Glunn, but what stood in front of him was an assassin with cold eyes, ready to attack him any moment. Enid gasped as he hurriedly started to run. But the man in the mask took out his dagger and asked him if he was the guy who ran away with the kid last night. So where had the kid gone? Enid, too, glanced back to check on him, but he was nowhere to be found. The masked man laughed at him that Glunn had abandoned him. Enid was also regretting. He pressed his lips into a thin line to endure it. He had become very soft. He should have never trusted a noble. Anyway, what could even he do when facing the enemy? He just knelt down and raised his hands in surrender while speaking to the masked man that he didn't know his face, so if he could just let him go. But the masked man didn't even wait for him to finish his sentence and attacked him with his weapon. Enid was scared and closed his eyes reflexively as any normal person would do, but the pain didn't come. Instead, a mature and deep voice told him to never, ever close his eyes in front of a man with a sword. Enid was confused, but the sight in front of him made him startled. There was a tall and sexy man standing without any clothes on his body holding the masked man by his neck. The attacker couldn't even breathe in his presence. The handsome man asked Enid if he was hurt. Enid replied that he was okay but was very surprised by the sudden event what just happened. And who was this guy? But then he remembered that he had seen this guy in the mirror. The very future spouse he had seen in the mirror stood in front of Enid. He glanced at him while squeezing the black guy's neck. Seeing that Enid was okay, he threw the attacker on the ground. Enid was a little fearful but tentatively asked if he was dead. The naked man replied that he was not dead yet. He had just paralyzed him with poison. Enid looked at him in vigilance. How was it even possible? He had nothing in his hands. Or rather, nothing on him at all. Wait, hold on a second. That huge thing in between his legs. At that moment, Enid froze. Seeing him frozen, the naked guy also looked below and stated naturally as he was stating some universal facts that it was morning time, so he should understand. Enid was feeling second-hand embarrassment. Didn't this guy feel any shame whatsoever? But, yeah, the morning thing explains a lot. He was too shy to look at him, so he removed his outer robe and told him to put that on, at least. Enid had no clue what was going on and where in the world that guy came from. He shyly peeked at him. Well, he looked very much like that noble kid Glunn. He handed over the rob and was trying his best to think something else other than, you know. He thought that maybe this naked guy would be Glunn's brother. It might be possible that he could be here for his brother. But why was he butt naked? Enid looked cute while peeking at him. Well, not anymore. That's a shame, Enid thought. But then he had a sudden realization of what he was thinking. He was a man, not a woman. He glanced at him. Was it like pure curiosity for something very unusual? While the man stood facing him with his hands on his chest, he told him straightforwardly that if he wanted to look, he could look. Why was he trying his best to peek at it? That was making him feel even more uncomfortable. Enid blushed in embarrassment and shouted at him about what he was talking about. He wasn't peeking at him at all. But then he shyly looked at his abs, chest, and even those straight legs. Enid gulped. The man looked at him like, "Who are you trying to fool?" Then stepped closer to him. Enid flinched, seeing him coming closer. They were very close. Enid's cheeks had turned red, but the man just dropped the bomb and told Enid that looking at his expression he seemed to be into men. Please stay tuned, like and subscribe for more. See you guys in the next video. Have a good day ahead. Bye.